Hi, I'm Chandler Garcia. As a PICU nurse and global health advocate, I've cared for women and children all over the world, from Costa Rica to Egypt to Kenya and beyond. And no matter where I go or how tough the conditions get, I always wear my figs. These scrubs are lightweight, breathable, and super soft, perfect for long shifts in any environment. They've got pockets in all the right places, the fit is flexible, and they're durable through every admission, surgery, and post-op. But it's not just about the scrubs. Another big part of what I love about Figs is when they say they're committed to supporting healthcare workers all over the world, they mean it. I recently joined them on an impact trip to India where I worked in triage, caring for babies in a mobile clinic. My Figs aren't just what I wear. They're part of the impact I want to make. Wherever my work takes me, Figs helps me show up ready to make a difference while looking and feeling my best. Get 15% off your first order at wearfigs.com with code FIGSRX. That's wearfigs.com, code FIGSRX.
Breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball. This is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
A warm and friendly hello! Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you as we're going to be joined in segment number 2 by one of our good friends, Rocco Miller, who does such great work over at Bracketeer.org. Looking at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball, we're going to be sizing up the Sweet 16 with them. We're going to talk about how Iowa's been able to get here, just how great of a coach Ben McCollum is. I know that there are some lists out there that out of the Sweet 16 coaches, they listed him as number 16. I think that myself and Rocco very, very much disagree. We're going to take a look at how they've been able to get here, just the top teams that are remaining in the field, just how closely knit a lot of these teams are with regards to their abilities as well, some of what he expects here from the next 2 days of action as well. We'll also talk a little bit about the coaching carousel, what North Carolina might be doing, and the fact that it's very interesting that Billy Donovan is showing quite a bit of interest in the job as well, so we'll be talking about that and so much more, and I know that he's going to dive in on the NC State job. Didn't see a lot with regards to coaching carousel on Wednesday. Really, the big move was Chris Mack, who was over at Charleston. He took the South Florida job after Brian Hodgson. He left to go to Providence. That's a very good pickup for South Florida, but not a lot of thoughts here with regards to coaching carousel. You're going to get much more of that as we do the off-season podcast. We still have a week and a half left of the regular season. Want to cherish these games as much as humanly possible, and that's why in the final segment, going to get you guys picks and analysis on all 4 games, on the Sweet 16 games, as we hit some bank shots. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have 1 or 2 ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at GUnit_81. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter. So as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it's very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Obviously, not the most rambunctious day of college basketball on Wednesday, as we only had 2 games, but we had 2 pretty solid games. Let's take a look back at them, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
Illinois State gets a job done over Dayton, 61-55 as 7.5 or so point underdogs for Illinois State. Started off 6 of 11 from 3. They closed up 6 of 16 from 3 points. Johnny Kinzinger, he led the way with 16 points, goes 4 of 7 from 3 points. Now, Illinois State did go 11 of 18 at the free throw line, while Dayton was 14 of 19 at the free throw line. But for Dayton, even though they win the turnover battle 15-5, they get outbirded 36-35, and this team was just cold. They start out 1 of 17 from 3-point and 3 of 25 from the outside. Emil Latang supplied the team with 10 points, and Jordan Durcock, along with Bryce Hurd, they were the top 2 scorers. They came in off the bench for a combined 23 points, but the team went 19 out of 63 from the floor. They shot a nice hearty 30%, so Illinois State, they're on to the NIT Final Four. Also on to the NIT Final Four, Auburn, a win but no cover. And Auburn now 2-14 against the spread in their last 16 games. So they have not made you money here in the NIT, but they've been able to get outright wins. 75-69, the final for Auburn. They were up 12 points at the half. They relinquished this one with a few late turnovers. They do win the turnover battle 12-7, but turned the ball over like twice in the final minute. That costed them a cover. You did have Filip Jovic be able to supply 18 points to lead the way. He had 9 rebounds. Both teams play even up 31-31 on the boards, but also for Auburn, 9-14 at the free throw line. A little bit costly there. Taj Pettiford, he was able to go off for 16 points. He had 2 turnovers. hours in this game, but keeping Nevada lively. Elijah Price says Auburn did pay the price with a non-cover because he gave the team 22 points, 11 rebounds. And if you're taking a look at trend-wise, what we're getting in college basketball overall for the season, it's been all about the underdogs and the unders. The under rate is at 50.8%, 2,906 unders, 2,820 overs, with the underdogs hitting at 51%, 2,948 and 2,777 with that regard. Take a look at the last 7 days in college basketball. The underdogs have had a little bit more of a rough go of at 28 and 32 against the spread. That's just 46.7%. Meanwhile, overs and unders, even Steven, 30 overs to 30 unders. So that's what we're seeing in college basketball right now, and that's where we're all getting trend-wise. Coming next, let's chat it up with our good friend Rocco Miller, who does such great work over at the Field of 68, bracketeer.org, Basket Under Review, and so much more right here on Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hughes Peterson, now a part of the Beeson Family Podcast.
Breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball. This is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the Beeson Family Podcast. This has been a podcast that has been running now. I believe that this is year number 8, and a man that has joined me for so many years and always does such a great job, William Boor. He's over there at Action Network, covering a little bit of everything, obviously doing an amazing job on the baseball front, but whether it be football, basketball, he helps out with a little bit of everything as he's the deputy editor over there. He's also based out there in the great state of Arizona, so he had a chance to see a lot of these teams up close and in person during spring training. You're able to follow him on the old Twitter/X at the letter W, last name Boor, Boor, all together. And William, great to get you aboard. Thank you.
Of course, Greg, great to be back. We got one game that is recording, but full slate tomorrow weekend, and we got a fun few months ahead.
Oh, we certainly do. And William, I did mention it in passing, the fact that you're out there in the great state of Arizona. And before we get into some futures and just some individual team talk, when it comes to coming into the upcoming season, how much/little do you make out of spring training results? Because I think for some guys, looking at you, Alek Manoah, I think that we can figure out that he's not the answer for the LA Angels. But that said, you do have some guys that they sort of shine, some guys that they sort of don't. And I do think that it's a very mixed bag when you take a look at the spring training results going into the regular season.
I put extremely little attention on it. Maybe if someone is a young player, you want to see what they have, how they compete at the major league level. But the fact is, spring training's just different. People are working on things. Effort is dependent on the day. Maybe they're only trying to hit a ball the other way. Maybe maybe a pitcher's only trying to work on his curveball. Something like that. I think it's just hard to put a lot of stock into it. Shoot, I mean, they're playing a bunch of day games for a season that's primarily played at night, which is kind of a dumb way that spring training's set up as well. I just really don't put a ton into it, maybe other than health. If someone looks like, they're hurt, or if they get hurt late in spring, that obviously impacts things. But if you're just looking at stats or how someone's fared in the final week of spring training or over their past 10 at-bats or something, I really don't care.
Yep, I am right there with you. I feel like it's sort of like, whose line is it anyway? Everything's made up, but the points don't matter. You mentioned one good thing. If a guy's not getting in his work, it's a stop and start sort of spring training. A pitcher isn't fully bolt back up, then maybe have a little bit of concern. But it's all like, oh, he went 3 of 10. He's all of a sudden going to be Willie Mays 2.0 or anything like that. So very much agree with you there. And just taking a look at some of these teams coming into the upcoming season, shock, surprise, surprise, the Dodgers are the betting favorite to win the World Series. But outside of the Dodgers, who do you think is a team that could be able to wreck the apple cart and perhaps have a little bit of a surprise season this year?
Yeah, I mean, the Dodgers are interesting. I will say to people that are going to bet the Dodgers, you'll probably get a better price at some point in the regular season if they lose 3 of 5.
You got a better price in the playoffs than you did during the regular season last year.
Yeah, exactly. Like, there's no point in betting them now, even if we're just talking straight picks and not bets or numbers. Yes, they're my pick to win the World Series, but I'm not putting anything on them now. It's just not worth, tying up your money for 6 months. As far as teams, I'm really high on the Mariners. I've already bet them to win the AL West at plus money. I think they're going to have a solid year. I'm also, if we're going to want to stick out West in the NL West, I'm on the Giants at over 80.5 wins. Now, they're not going to, compete with the Dodgers, obviously, to win that division. San Diego looks really good. But do I think the Giants can be an above 500 baseball team? Absolutely. I think they can pitch. I kind of really like what Buster Posey is doing over there in the GM role. Really like Webb. So hopefully he gets us in a good start tonight. We'll see what happens by the time people listen to this. And you can never discount a team that gets a bunch of games against the Rockies.
Yep, exactly. With the Colorado Rockies, not a team that I really want to take over their win total. I think that they're going to be a little bit better than last year, but that is not saying very much, to say the least, as William Boor does such great work over at Action Network is joining me on the Baseball Betting Show. And I'm so glad that you did mention in passing the Colorado Rockies, because I've noticed this the last few years with teams like the Chicago White Sox. The Diamondbacks had one terrible season before they made it to the World Series. It feels like every year we do have a few teams that they truly do lose 105, 110 games. Do you think that this is just a new little bit of an aspect of baseball where there's just going to be like 3 or 4 like totally fadeable teams that even on their best days, they just don't provide a lot of value as north of $2 favorites?
Hello, Angels. Yeah, I definitely think it's going to be a thing. It has been the past couple of years. I don't see why it would change this year. It's unfortunate because it, makes certain games incredibly boring. It makes certain teams boring. I don't know how many times I'm going to be on this podcast this year, but there's teams like the Angels that we just won't talk about often, which kind of sucks if you're a fan of the team, but it is what it is. Like, I'm with you. I definitely think that this is going to be a trend that continues where there's some teams that just are god awful.
Yep, not so Ohapi for Logan Ohapi, which, I mean, he hits quite a few home runs, but man, it is rough. And meant to say plus $2 underdogs, not plus $2 favorites, but I think a lot of people knew what I was putting down there, as William Boor does such great work over at Action Network, joining me right here on the Baseball Betting Show. And I think this might be one of the most fascinating teams in all of baseball this year, because they were the disappointment of the year last year and might have been the biggest disappointment we've seen in the decade thus far. The Atlanta Braves, who failed to make the playoffs last year, copious amount of injuries. They are dealing with Spencer Strider and Sean Murphy starting out the year on the injured list. But what are our expectations for an Atlanta Braves team that is out there in an AL East where the Mets have spent a bunch of money, but you never know what you're going to get out of the Mets? The Phillies seem to have taken a half step back, and for the Nationals, I just don't think that's very bright for them, but I actually see a little bit of upside for the Miami Marlins.
Yeah, I'm with you. Braves are interesting because of the injuries. That's obviously something that you do pay attention to based on spring training. I kind of like their roster, but you're not really sure on some of these injuries. Probably, a mid 80-ish win team, depending on how that division shakes out. Maybe it's a wild card sort of thing. I'm not really sure what happens with that team because of the health, which is certainly a tricky spot. However, I do know if the Braves are going to make the postseason, if they are going to have a year where they live up to all those expectations and become the team we know, Ronald Acuna at plus 1,100 to win MVP is going to have to probably hit. I mean, if the Braves are going to the postseason, you got to think he put together a monster year. So I've kind of attacked Atlanta that way.
Yeah, but I do think that is a smart way of going about it, because without Acuna in the lineup last season, man, that Braves team just was not the same team, and it was a massively disappointing year. But a team that's also banged up in that division as well is the Philadelphia Phillies, with everything lingering with Zach Wheeler. Obviously, they no longer have Nick Castellanos, and when I take a look at the board for Thursday, something that is calling my name is a plus money on the Rangers with Nathan Eovaldi starting. I'm not sure if you have too many bets going down for the Thursday games, but when I take a look at the board, and things are a little bit murky on opening day, but getting the Rangers at like plus 135, plus 140 with a guy in Eovaldi who, if he stayed healthy, I thought he was going to be in the running for the Cy Young Award. I think that that's actually really good value.
I think that is really good value, getting the Rangers at plus money there. I also lean toward the under on that game as well.
Absolutely.
Eovaldi's really good. I know we've got a couple people at Action Network that are on the Christopher Sanchez Cy Young train. That game, I think runs are going to be extremely limited. I think at the price point, yes, I would rather take the Rangers over the Phillies at plus money for sure. But if I'm going to play that game, I'd probably play the under rather than a side.
Yep, I don't blame you there. And with Philadelphia as well, hitting conditions just aren't great in late March, early April as well. When you get into the summer months, that becomes a little bit more of a launching pad. You always want to be checking in on the wind out there in Philadelphia as well, because everyone talks about it at Wrigley Field. But ballpark number 2/3 in terms of the biggest impact with the wind is probably out there at Citizens Bank Park. So I do agree with you on that front as well. And how do you take a look at the Rangers? Because I know that you talked up the Mariners, and rightfully so. I think that the Mariners should be the favorite favorite in that division. But I think that with the Rangers, they had a really nice second half of the season last year, ran out of gas when Nathan Eovaldi went down, but this is a team that I think could be a sneaky team to be able to get into that American League playoff picture.
Yeah, I don't mind taking a Rangers playoff flyer at all. I think, the Mariners, as we mentioned, deserve to be the favorite in that division. But Texas is really good. Like you mentioned, they finished the year, or they were really good last year, slumped toward the end, but, finished with a plus 79 run differential, expected win-loss 90 and 72 last year, despite going 81 and 81. So they definitely left some wins on the table. And if you get a few of those wins and they can get up to 86, 87, 88 wins, they're right there in the thick of it.
Yep, right there with you. It felt like they just had a lot of struggles from the likes of Jock Peterson. Adolis Garcia was now, ironically enough, on the Philadelphia Phillies as well. So I think that that's a lot of fun. And speaking of acquisitions as well, who do you feel like were some of the biggest ones in the offseason? Because don't think that Adolis Garcia going to the Phillies is necessarily going to be cracking the top five. But as we know, we saw a lot of movement with like Alex Bregman going to the Cubs after they lose out on Kyle Tucker as the rich get richer with the LA Dodgers. The Milwaukee Brewers do what the Milwaukee Brewers do. They don't get a lot in return, and they decide to trade away a lot of their players. So thanks a lot, Milwaukee Brewers. But that said, were there some moves in the offseason that maybe went a little bit under the radar that you think are going to be paying big dividends this year?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned a couple of them. The one I'd say that you didn't mention is obviously Pete Alonso.
Yeah.
I think that gets intriguing, especially in that park. I think that could be a lot of fun on some of his futures, and it just makes that AL East division really intriguing.
Yep, and with the Baltimore Orioles, you want to talk about teams coming into the season banged up. Man, Jackson Holiday, Jordan Westberg, they're banged up. Andrew Kittredge, Keegan Aiken, they're banged up. Fortunately, they've got some starting pitching, so that is going to help them out a little bit, but I think that that's a very intriguing team, and when you take a look at that AL East, rightfully so, the New York Yankees are the favorites in that division, but I think that that's a division where you could make a case for all five teams perhaps being able to be right around / above 500 with a Tampa Bay Rays team that they don't do a ton in the offseason, but you know that they're always going to be lurking out there as well.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm on Yankees under 91.5 wins, and that's not necessarily a fade of the Yankees. I think they're going to be good, but that's more of a play on the rest of the division. I think those games, those AL East games, are going to be tough all year, and I think it's going to be a grind. I think the Yankees could very well win that division, but I also think just getting to 92 is going to be tough. You're right. The Yankees, very good. Red Sox, very good. The Blue Jays were a strike away from winning the World Series last year. I know the roster is a little different, but that's still a good team. The Orioles, we just talked about Pete Alonso. Rays, kind of dicey, but always a solid team.
If they get Shane McClanahan back at 100%, though.
That's true. Yeah, that's a big change, obviously.
Yep, so, I mean, I'm right there with you. All five teams in that division are going to be very rock solid, so that'll be a fun race to be watching all season long. And is there anything else that you've got a few flyers on / a few bets on, whether that be just individual games for Thursday or a feature or two that you were able to get to for the upcoming season?
Covered all my big futures. Thursday, let's just go with the first game of the day. We got Peralta Skeens. Let's go first 5 innings under. Let's get the first sweat out of the way. Let's not even wait a full game. Let's just do 5 innings, first game of the day. You and me are both on the West Coast. Let's knock out a bet right before lunchtime even.
Absolutely. Hey, for me, that's like a coffee breakfast bet for myself. That is going to be a lot of fun with Freddie Peralta making his debut for the Mets. So it's almost like it's an NL Central brouhaha out there as well. So that's going to be an amazing one. And William, I know that you love this sport much like I do. You do such a great job covering it all over at Action Network. So love to give people at home know it's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
For sure. Follow me on Twitter at WBoor, WBOOR, and all my picks will be in the Action Network app at William Boor _, all one word. Make sure to check out the app, not only for my picks, but everything me and my coworkers are doing. All sorts of baseball stuff all season. NBA playoffs are coming up. NHL playoffs are coming up. We're in the thick of March Madness, which I know you obviously cover as well. So we've got all sorts of stuff to help hopefully make you guys better bettors.
Absolutely. And William, he's doing such amazing work every single time he joins me. He lends such great insights and did so once again today. So big thanks to William for joining me right here on the Baseball Betting Show, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And coming up next, well, we got one game on the board for Wednesday. Now we get much more of a full slate for this Thursday. I give you guys picks and analysis on every single one of them as we touch them all.
breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball. This is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by William Boor, who does such great work over at Action Network, looking at this great game that we all know and love of baseball. Every single time he joins me, lends such great insights and did so once again today. So big thanks to William for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this Baseball Thursday as we touch them all.
If a game is listed on the betting board, Greg has a side and a total on it, so it is time to touch them all.
Do note that, as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at @GUnit_D1, and we're going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order. This is where, in baseball, it's actually quite convenient. You go with the National League games first in time order, the American League games in time order, and then the Interleague games in time order. That's actually a pretty good way of doing so. So let's get things started. This is 901, 902. It is the Pittsburgh Pirates. They walk the plank to New York to face off against the New York Mets as Freddie Peralta makes his debut for the Mets and Paul Skeens is on the bump for the Buccos, and Pirates are very slim underdogs here. You're going to be finding them anywhere between even money to plus 105, finding as low as a minus 110 to as high as minus 120 out there on the New York Mets. So on this game is 6.5 with the over at a minus 120 and the under, it is at minus 105. And with this one, I'm going to be willing to lay up to minus 113 here with the Mets. I did set them as a minus 114 favorite. I do think that this is going to be a very tight one for Paul Skeens. He was absolutely amazing last season, but the one thing that Paul Skeens didn't get a lot of was run support. And I do think that the Pittsburgh Pirates going to be a little bit better this season, but they were bottom 10 team in the big leagues in terms of just being able to create runs. Like Paul Skeens had a 1.97 ERA last season, 2.36 fielding independent, gave up a half a home run per 9 innings and a half strikeouts per 9 innings, but to show for it, had a hearty 10-10 record. Still managed to be able to win the Cy Young Award, but that shows you where they're at right there. Meanwhile, for Freddie Peralta, he had himself a really nice season last year. I felt like he was due in for a little bit of regression, but the swing and miss stuff, it is still there for him. With the Brewers last year, 10.4 strikeouts, 3.5 walks per 9 innings, 1.1 home runs per 9 innings allowed. I do think that goes downward because now he's in an even more pitcher-friendly ballpark out there in New York. I think that this is going to help him out all the more. And again, I was touching about it. This is a Pittsburgh Pirates team that is less than impressive with regards to their lineup. Now, Henry Davis, I think, is going to come along for the ride a little bit, former number 1 overall pick, but he has yet to be able to figure it out. Brian Reynolds had himself a so-so year last year, had about a 245, 16 home runs. You do have Oniel Cruz, who he can explode at any time, but he had the Mendoza line of a 200 last year as well. So, he's got the boom, but still, that's not great. I do like the pickup of Marcell Ozuna. Marcell Ozuna over the last 2 years was very rock solid with the Atlanta Braves. Didn't necessarily hit for the world's greatest average last year, but still, he was giving you about a 355 on base, 20 plus home runs, so that is an upgrade for the Pittsburgh Pirates, but you've got other these guys like Nick Gonzalez, Jared Trollo. Like, what are you going to be able to expect out of them? Brandon Lau. I think that there's a little bit of upside with Lau, but I'm still not blown away by this lineup. And for the Mets, it's life without Pete Alonso, as now they're going to have Brett Beatty playing day-to-day over at first base. They pick up Marcus Semien, who was just a massive disappointment with the Texas Rangers over the last few seasons. I think that there's upside to him hitting a 230, but still, you've got a guy in Juan Soto. You know what to expect out of him. I know that a lot of people said he had a down year last year. Guy still hit for 43 home runs, 100 plus RBI with a 396 on base. Like, if that's a down season, well, I would love to have a down season as well. But Jorge Polanco, that was a nice pickup in the offseason along with Bo Bichette. Bichette was hitting for above a 300 when he came back last season. Polanco, 25 plus home runs. So I do think that there's firepower with New York, but keep in mind that in the Mets Stadium, it's very pitcher friendly. Not necessarily the world's greatest conditions out there, and I'm a little bit more of a believer in the Mets bullpen. They pick up Luke Weaver, who I think is rock solid. Devin Williams is a roll of the dice. He was terrible last year, but you recall 2 years ago when he was with the Brewers, he was great until the Mets happened. So, hey, maybe going to the New York Mets will fix the issue that he had after the New York Mets seemingly ended him, and it's still, even if Devin Williams doesn't get back to peak form, much more trustworthy than what you've got with the Pirates. Now they're going to be looking at Gregory Soto along Dennis Santana. Dennis Santana was not bad last season. He posted up a sub 225 ERA, got a little bit of upside there. Justin Lawrence was actually very good good in the small sample size that we saw last season, but what are you going to be able to get out of Udomes with the Johan Ramirez and Mason Montgomery? Keep in mind, with this being the first start of the year, probably going to expect an inning less than what you typically get out of Skeens and Peralta, but even with that, I do like the under, so my total is 6.3, and with the bets, I'm willing to lay up to minus 113 on that money line. 903, 904. It's the Nationals. They are on the road against the Chicago Cubs. Matthew Boyd is on the bump for the Cubs. Cade Cavalli is on the bump for the Nationals. Total on this game, it is 8. The under is minus 115, minus 120. Over is between even a minus 105, with the Cubs there between a minus 220 to a minus 230 favorite. And between plus 185 to a plus 190 is that number on the Washington Nationals. In on the over, but I initially handicapped this above a 9. It looks like the wind is sort of going to be changing as the game goes along. It's going to start out blowing out, and then it's going to be going inward. So I did have to make an adjustment down to 8.3 after I initially put that at a 9.3. But for Cade Cavalli, I actually think that you've got a little bit of upside with him. And Matthew Boyd was wearing down towards back half of the season last year, but Matthew Boyd comes blazing last year for the Chicago Cubs, and he's cut down on the strikeouts from where he was with the Tigers. But I still remember when he was with the Tigers, he was a strikeout or nothing sort of guy. He really honed in on that last year. Just 2.1 walks per 9 innings. Didn't put guys on cheaply. He was only giving up about 1 home run per 9 innings. Posted up a 3.21 ERA with fielding independent. That was more in the neighborhood, about a 3.65. So I like what he's able to bring to the table. And then for Cade Cavalli, it was a relatively small sample size last year. Got called up late in its set starts. I liked what I saw. He was able to post up a 4.25 ERA. Did give up 1.3 home runs per 9 innings, but he was able to give you only about 2.8 walks per 9 innings. A guy that, if I'm not mistaken, he was a stud out there with the Oklahoma Sooners. Dealt with a little bit of injury, so now he's coming off of that injury full bore, and he should be all the better this season. But you have the Washington Nationals bullpen. The Washington Nationals bullpen has been as bad as it gets since the dawn of time. You're relying upon Cito Perez, Brad Lord, Gus Varland, and PJ Poulin. Like, gosh, Clayton Beeter is right now the closer for this team. There's just no trusting in this bullpen whatsoever, especially with this being the first start of the season where the starters aren't going to be going as long. And I'm not saying that the Chicago Cubs are the Mona Lisa Vitos of their bullpen pitching. They're in the back half of the big leagues in terms of bullpen ERA. In the second half last season, they actually got off to a really nice start. I think that Caleb Thielbar is an upside, sub-3 ERA last season. Daniel Palencia is a nice closer. They pick up Hunter Harvey in the offseason. It was a very small sample size for him last season, but I still remember when he was with the Royals a few seasons ago, he was absolutely awful. But when he was with Washington Nationals back in the day, he was actually relatively rock solid. So we'll see what he's able to bring for the team. But overall, I do think that Boyd going to be able to go a little bit deeper into the game than Cavalli. And for the Cubs, are right now deal with an injury to Seiya Suzuki. He's going to be out of the fold, but you've got Michael Conforto who can easily slot in there. Pico Armstrong was amazing to start the year last year. Completely fell off towards back half of the season last year. I think that you get somewhere between A and B. I think that he's going to be a little bit more, shall we say, consistent this season than guys like Dansby Swanson, Michael Busch are guys that are able to hit above a 250 for 25 plus home runs. Keep in mind, the Cubs offense in the first half of the season last year was really good. Massive fall off in the second half of the season, but now you bring in Alex Bregman, obviously with the loss of Kyle Tucker, but when Bregman was out there on the field, he was able to supply 18 home runs over the course of only about 114 games, provided a 360 on base. I think that he's going to hit really well in this ballpark. And for the Washington Nationals, they were looking to build around Dylan Cruz, and I aim for Cruz. It just has not happened for him thus far. He's not even on the opening day roster as a starter for this team, so that just did not work out for them. Now you're looking at someone young like a Brady House who had his moments last year but doesn't necessarily give you a lot of pop. Keibert Ruiz has not been what they've been hoping for as well. Dallin Lyle, Jacob Young in the outfield, those guys are rough. I love James Wood. Like, James Wood gave you good wood, 30 plus home runs, and then you got an upside guy, CJ Abrams, who last time he was at Chicago about a year plus ago, he was out gambling a little bit too long, but when he's not out gambling too long, he's actually halfway decent. So I do think that you get enough for the over because I really do not trust in this Washington Nationals bullpen. I did set my money line price at a minus 203. If you're looking to lay a run half right now with the Cubs, that's right around about minus 104, minus 108. I'd be willing to go up to a minus 108. I set that mine at a minus 108, so I'm laying the minus 108 here with the Cubs run line, and I do like this total over. 905, 906, you've got the Arizona Diamondbacks on the road. They're facing up against the LA Dodgers. Yoshinobu Yamamoto is going to be on the bump for the Dodgers, and Zach Gallen looks to fill it up for the Arizona Diamondbacks. Total on this game is between 8.5 and 9. On the 8.5, over is between minus 120 to minus 130. Under is between even and plus 110. On the 9, under is minus 115. Over is minus 105. I took an under 9 at a minus 115. I set my total at 7.9 with Zach Gallen. He's always been a better pitcher when he has been at home rather than away from home. Seems like he ironed out the splits a little bit last season, though. Last season, it was not great to say the least. He supplied the team with a 4.83 ERA. Fielding independent was more in that neighborhood of about a 4.50, and I felt like he was legitimately a little bit unlucky last season, but strikeout numbers were down, 8.2 strikeouts per 9 innings. Really, ever since the team made the World Series, it feels like he's been a little bit in a funk. I think that this year he could be able to bust out a little bit more in the second half of the season. That ERA was more than a full point lower, so I do feel a little bit better about him moving forward. He has to go up against the Death Star lineup of the LA Dodgers, the best team that money can buy as of right now, because we all know what Shohei Ohtani is able to do. He'll give you 40 plus home runs, he'll give you north of a 375 on base. That's going to be very rock solid for the team. But then you've got Will Smith, who's able to get jiggy with it. He supplied the team with nearly a 300 average. He was able to hit some bombs. Max Muncy is such a difference maker for the Dodgers team. Like last year, he had 19 home runs and he only hit a 243, but his on-base percentage is big, and this Dodgers team averages more than a full run per game more when Muncy's out there on the field rather than without him. Freddie Freeman, you know what you're going to be able to get out of him, and even with Tommy Edman on the injured list, you've got guys like Santiago Espino, Miguel Rojas, who are able to supply some offense, as we know with Miguel Rojas being the savior of the World Series last season. He's a big part of the team. Andy Paz, he had a rough postseason, but during the regular season last year, we saw him hit 25 plus home runs, hit a 270. Like, this is just a locked and loaded lineup, and now you add in there Kyle Tucker, and for Yoshinobu Yamamoto, he was dominant last year, 249 ERA, fielding independent to boot. He was giving you 10 plus strikeouts per 9 innings, supplying fewer than 2.5 walks per 9 innings. Like Yoshinobu Yamamoto actually had a little bit of a higher ERA at home rather than away from home, but he's one of the most dominant pitchers in baseball right now. And for the Dodgers, they actually have a healthy bullpen. I liked what I saw to Jack Dreyer last year. He was playing the team with a sub-3 ERA. Alex Vesia, when he's at full force, he'll give you about a 3 ERA. You've got Edwin Diaz at the closer spot. Blake Tryon was not trustworthy during the postseason, but I believe that there's still a little bit of upside with him as well. You've got a guy in Tanner Scott who was such a dominant player 2 seasons ago. Last year, we did see the fall off with him. I think that he returns to that form that he had with the Miami Marlins, and I do think that for the LA Dodgers, they are going to be able to do a solid job here. But for the Arizona Diamondbacks, this is a team that I think can stay lively, and what I think is going to be a little bit of a lower scoring game. Keep in mind, even though it is Los Angeles, even in Los Angeles, it's not quite as warm as it is going to be in future months, even though but there's much nicer out there than it is going to be in other places. Ketel Marte may not play in this game. He's day-to-day. He's dealing with a little bit of ailment, but team picks up Carlos Santana. Doesn't really hit for a lot of average, but even at 39 years old, he still has some hop in the back. I like Gabriel Moreno, dealt with injury throughout much of last season, but he's a guy that's able to hit a 285. This is a Diamondbacks team that when they're at their peak, they're able to be a top 10 team with regards to run creation. We saw Corbin Carroll after he had an injury-riddled season 2 years ago. He returned last year, hit 30-plus home runs. He looked rock solid. Pavin Smith is a guy that dealt with injuries. He's back. And now you've got Nolan Arenado, who I knew it was a rough season for him last year with the St. Louis Cardinals. He's up there in years, but he's still 34 years old. It's not like this guy is totally ancient. I think that the change in scenery could be able to do him some good. He's still a guy that can reach base relatively solid. I felt like it was just a bad situation last year with the St. Louis Cardinals and with the Arizona Diamondbacks. I don't think that they get the job done outright. It's going to be tough to knock off the Dodgers, but with having Zach Gallen on the mound, I'd be willing to take anything of plus money on their plus 1.5 run line. Right now, I'm seeing that more in the neighborhood about a plus 105. I'm seeing as good as a plus 112 out there at Circa, and that's what I landed on. I took a run half here with the Diamondbacks. Don't necessarily want that money line, but I'm taking a run half with the Diamondbacks, and what I think is going to be a lower scoring game. Sub I total 7.9, so also in on the under. 9-7, 908. You've got the Minnesota Twins on the road against the Baltimore Orioles. Trevor Rogers is in the neighborhood for the Baltimore Orioles, and Joe Ryan goes for Minnesota. Minnesota is an underdog of between plus 116 to a plus 123. Meanwhile, minus 134 to minus 143. That number on Baltimore totals between 8 and 8.5. On the 8.5, unders minus 120. The overs even. On the 8, overs between minus 110 to a minus 120. Unders between even a minus 105. And I do like this total under. I set my total at a 7.7. You've got a Minnesota Twins team that, man, this bullpen is not going to be good to say the least. Like, they traded away everything at the trade deadline last year, and by everything, I mean everything, aside from really Joe Ryan. And Joe Ryan is a guy that's going to give you 10 plus strikeouts per 9 innings. He's always been a little bit better when he's been at home rather than away from home. Throughout his career, gives up about 1.3 to 1.4 home runs per 9 innings when he's in a road/neutral court venue. But I mean, still, this is a guy that I think is going to be able to go out there, give you those 10 plus strikeouts per 9 innings. And Joe Ryan did a really good job in terms of keeping things out in front of him last season as well. Did a nice job in terms of cutting down on the walks, in terms of walks per 9 9 innings last season. That was right around about 2. So I think that he's going to be able to do a good job there. Now, who he's passing the ball off to, that is a big question mark, as you still have Justin Topa, and Topa had a sub-4 ERA last year. I guess if that's okay, they pick up Eric Orze, who they're going to be hoping for some big things out of him after he was pretty solid with the Tampa Bay Rays last season, but you've got Taylor Rogers as a closer, a guy that throws very, very slowly, tries to just utilize manipulation there. Cole Sands, Cody Funderburk, these were guys that were not great last season. And for the Minnesota Twins, can they just stay healthy? Because Royce Lewis, along with Byron Buxton, when these guys were firing all cylinders back in the day, man, these guys are so lethal, and man, they're so fragile. Like Royce Lewis got injured in the first game last year. I think he hit a first home run in his first at bat, and then he got hurt. Like, you just have no idea what you're going to be able to get there, but Luke Cashel was able to hit for about a 300 in the small sample size that we saw out of him last season. I think that there's a bit of upside there. They bring in Josh Bell, who he's a very all-or-nothing guy, was pretty solid in the second half of the season last year. First half of the season, he was just absolutely abysmal, but in the second half of the season, he was sitting above a 250, provided a double-figure amount of homers. Post-All-Star break, James Outman, if he can figure it out, because he had a nice hearty .134 with 6 home runs last season. They might have a little bit of something there, but lots of question mark. Brooks Lee, I think that you can expect him to be okay, but I have a lot of question marks with that lineup. And with the Baltimore Orioles, man, you have some question marks with regards to what you're going to be able to get out of this lineup as well, because Jackson Holiday, Jordan Westberg, they're starting the season on the injured list. Now, good news is you've got Kobe Mayo as a little bit of a stopgap, but what are you going to be able to get out of Adley Rutschman, who a few seasons ago, he was looking like he was going to be one of the next big things in all of baseball. In an injury-plagued season last year, hit a 220 with 9 home runs. Recognize that he reached base a little bit, but that was not great. Taylor Ward had 36 home runs with the Angels last year, but again, a guy that was a little bit all or nothing. Dylan Beavers, Colton Cowser, they're relying upon these guys to be able to take some strides forward. Obviously, you've got Pete Alonso, who supplied 38 home runs in New York, and now you're in an even better ballpark for hitters for him. So I think that he's going to be able to give you some nice pop, but his bullpen is in all sorts of question because Felix Bautista, he's going to be starting out the year injured if he returns at all. They pick up Ryan Helsley, which, boy, that was not great for him with the New York Mets, but we've seen him at full force. 2 years ago was a nice closer. Ynier Cano, 2 years ago, was really nice. Last year, not so good to say the least. Taylor Wells, I actually like what he's able to provide. This is a guy that's able to give you a sub-3 ERA. They're converting him from being a bit more of a starter into more of a reliever. I think that he could be an upside guy, and especially a guy that can fill a few innings, because you're not going to be having starters go as long here in the first half of the season. And for Trevor Rogers, you have to wonder if the real Trevor Rogers will stand up this season, because 2 years ago when he was with the both Marlins and the Baltimore Orioles, this guy was absolutely terrible. He went 2-11 with a 4.91 ERA, wasn't striking out anyone. The command was all over the place, a 1.7 strikeout to walk ratio. And then last season, he starts out the year at AAA. He was deemed as a massive failure that they traded for. He goes out there, supplies a 1.81 ERA, less than a half a home run per 9 innings. I think you get somewhere between A and B. I don't think he's as bad as he was in 2024. I don't think he's as good as he was in 2025. I think he's going to be somewhere between A and B. And as a result, with the Orioles, I set them as more of a minus 126 favorite here. Right now, I'm seeing the money line prices more around about a minus 134 to a minus 140. And right now, I am seeing this Twins money line go up to as high as a 126, 128 in a lot of places. That's personally what I'm targeting, with a plus 127 or higher. Going to be in on the Twins on the money line. So I told 7.7. Keep in mind, again, cold out there in the northeast part of the country. So like the under 909, 910 on the card. You've got the LA Angels. They're going to be on the road against the Houston Astros. It is Hunter Brown on the bump for the Astros, and Jose Soriano is on the bump for the Angels. So on this game, it is 8. The over is between minus 110 to a minus 115. Under is between minus 105 to a minus 110. With the Astros, going to be laying with them anywhere between minus 175 to minus 185, plus 150 to plus 160. That number on the Angels, if you're looking to lay run at, by the way, with the Houston Astros, getting that anywhere between about a plus 110. I'm seeing as high as a plus 118 out there as well, and I'm willing to take the run line here. I need at least that plus 118 to be able to do so, but I do want the Astros on the run line because I think that this is going to be a really, really bad year for the Angels. I actually could see a world where the Angels aren't completely awful. And Jose Soriano, when he was on the road last year, posted up a 2.90 ERA with 0.4 home runs per 9 innings, a 5.90 ERA at home. He was giving up more like 1 home run per 9 innings, and Soriano actually does a really good job in terms of keeping the ball in the yard. The issue for him is walks. You take a look at him last season, and he was supplying over 4 walks per 9 innings, a strikeout to walk ratio of a 1.9. He knocks himself out of games early, and shock, surprise, surprise, the Angels bullpen has not been trustworthy over years. I do think that you've got a little bit more here, but Kirby Yates is on the injured list. Ben Joyce is on the injured list. You're relying upon Drew Pomeranz, who somehow, someway had a really good year last year with the Cubs, but what are you going to be able to get out of him moving forward? They're relying upon Jordan Romano as their closer, who had a nice hearty 8.23 ERA last year. He was absolutely terrible. Ryan Seferian is one of their most trustworthy relievers. Brent Suter, the pterodactyl himself, is on the roster. Like, there's just no knowing what you're going to be able to get out of them. And then for the LA Angels, they were about a 10 team in terms of run creation last year. You saw Mike Trout out there, but is he going to get injured mid-game? Like, even with Mike Trout, he did supply 26 home runs over the course of 130 games last season. It was as healthy as he's been since the COVID 2020 season, but still, he only provided about a 360 on base. You honestly expect a little bit more out of Mike Trout. Joe Adele, he's able to set fire to the rain with the way that he hits 37 home runs, but he sets fire to his on-base percentage at less than a 300. Logan Hoppe, very happy about the fact that he's got power, not so happy about the fact that he had a 258 on base last season. So, got a lot of guys that are very all or nothing, and when the conditions are not the world's greatest, now out there in Houston, it's a little bit more of an indoor park that helps you out a little bit. You just don't know what you're going to get out of them. Nolan Chunal was a little bit hit or miss towards the back half of the season last year, and for the Houston Astros, this isn't the same offense that we've seen in the past as well. Yanier Diaz is a guy that's able to give you some pop, but again, not a guy that's going to draw a lot of walks. And to the credit of the Astros, year in and year out, this is always a team that doesn't strike out a ton, but they don't draw out for themselves a ton of walks either. Christian Walker was not great last season. Did supply you with 27 home runs, but that on-base percentage was all the way down to a 297. They need to work on that, being a little bit better. Yordan Alvarez, he missed most of the season last year. What are you going to be able to expect out of him as he's looking to be able to just get back into the flow of things? Cam Smith, Jake Myers, these are young guys in the outfield that could be a little bit hit or miss. Jeremy Pena, he was very good in terms of moving the line. Hit a 300 last year. I feel like you know what you're going to be able to get out of Jose Altuve, but the reason why I like the Astros on the run line is that you've got a guy in Hunter Brown who was so dominant last year. 10 strikeouts per 9 innings, 2.43 ERA. This guy was honestly in the mix for the Cy Young Award throughout much of the season as well. He's got really good home and road splits as well. When he was at home last year, about a 2.30 ERA. In his home starts, he was giving up in that neighborhood about 1 home run per 9 innings. His walks per 9 rate is right around 3, so he's very conservative with his pitches. And for the Astros, it's not quite the bullpen that we've seen in the past. It's still relatively solid, though, as Josh Hader is going to be starting out the year on the injured list, but you've got the Bryans, Brian King, Brian Abreu, pair of guys that are going to give you a sub 3.35 ERA. Stephen Okert, he was giving you about a 3 ERA. These are guys that are relatively reliable. Now, Roderi Munoz, they're probably going to be looking at him. He's not great, to say the least, but I do think that with Hunter Brown probably being able to go a little bit deeper than most of these starters on opening day, that the Astros get the job done. We'll take plus 118 or higher on that run line. I do like the under semi-total at a 7.6, 9-11, 9-12. You've got the Guardians on the road against the Seattle Mariners as Logan Gilbert is on the bump for the Mariners, and Tanner Bybee goes for Cleveland. Cleveland is a underdog here between plus 152 to as high as a plus 165, and between minus 180 to minus 190. That number on Seattle, total 6.5. The over is minus 120. The under is even. If you're looking to lay a run at, by the way, with the Seattle Mariners, you're going to be able to find that right around about a plus 120, even seeing as high as a plus 130 out there, and plus 128 is my buy point on that Mariners run line. I set the money line price more around about a minus 171, and I do think that this total has gotten a little bit too low now for Seattle. If you look at the metrics last year, it was the most pitcher-friendly ballpark in all of baseball, and for Logan Gilbert, he was great last season. Dealt with a few injuries during the season, but when he was out there for his 25 starts, he was giving up about 1.4 home runs per 9 innings, but supplied the team with 12 strikeouts at 2.1 walks per 9 innings, 3.44 ERA, but a lower fielding dependent at a 3.35, and obviously, when you're out there in Seattle, you don't have to deal with the deep ball quite as much, especially out there in late March. He posted up a 2.24 home ERA, and at home he was giving up about 1.1 home runs per 9 innings, really gave up the deep ball when he was away from home. And for Bybee, he had a little bit of a rough season last year, posting up a 4.24 ERA. For Bybee, the big thing was that the swing and miss stuff was just down from his first 2 seasons, down to about 8 strikeouts per 9 innings, 2.7 walks per 9 innings is not bad. Fielding independent was right in line with that ERA of a 4.24. The fielding dependent was a 4.34, and to the benefit of Tanner Bybee, you know that the bullpen is going to be there with Cleveland Guardians year in and year out. They've got such a strong bullpen. They are dealing with Hunter Gaddis, dealing with a little bit of an injury, probably not going to be available to start the season, but I mean, you've got so many guys, Eric Sobrowski, Tim Herron, Cade Smith, Sean Armstrong. All these guys are able to go out there, give you good innings, give you a sub 3.35 ERA, but I mean, with the starting pitching last year for the Cleveland Guardians, honestly, it was not amazing, and for the Guardians, this is a team that year in and year out, they're in the bottom 10 in the big leagues in terms of run creation. Now they've got a little bit of insurance with Rhys Hoskins. I have to think that he might be in a little bit of a timeshare here with Kyle Manzardo. As for Manzardo, he gave the team 27 home runs, but didn't do a great job in terms of move the line, getting on base, and when it comes to Stephen Kwan, this is a guy that is really that stabilizer, finds a way on. I felt like sometimes last year he was trying to hit a little bit too much for power. They just need singles out of him. They need a man on base, because when you have someone like a Brian Rocchio that doesn't hit for power and hits for less than 240, that's an issue. I mean, whenever you had out there the backup catcher in Austin Hedges, you knew that it was not great. And even Bo Naylor hit a $195 last season. So you just don't have a lot of guys like CJ Kafis and company. They're able to move the line, get on base. And for the Seattle Mariners, even though they are in a very pitcher-friendly ballpark, and now they no longer have Eugenio Suarez, who they picked up at the trade deadline, you still have a lot of power with Cal Raleigh, big dumper going out for 60-plus home runs last season. Josh Naylor knows all about the Cleveland Guardians. He's a guy that's able to give you 20-plus bombs, and it's actually starting to steal bases. So yay, verily there. They pick up Brandon Donovan, who I think is going to be able to be a nice stabilizer for this team, a guy that throughout his career with the St. Louis Cardinals was always above a 340 with regards to his on base. Now they are dealing with an injury to J.P. Crawford, so have to think that you're either going to see a little bit more Victor Robles or Leo Rivas, but I mean, these are two guys with some speed that are able to find a way to get on base. And Randy Arozarena, he could be all or nothing, but another guy that hit 27 home runs last season, guy that's able to do a solid job in terms of drawing walks. And for the Seattle Mariners, they've got one of the most dominant bullpens in the big leagues. I know that Andres Munoz sometimes blows some saves, but I mean, this is a guy that posted up a $1.73 last season. In terms of his ERA, Matt Brash, when he came off of injury, he was one of the best setup men in all baseball. Even someone like an Edward Pizarro was able to give you 250 ERA. Carlos Vargas, they've got a very, very deep bullpen. If they can have Gabe Spire look a little bit better as well, I think that the Mariners have a lot of upside there. I think that Bybee improves a little bit from last season, but I really don't trust him in this spot, especially with Eric Sobrowski dealing with an injury. I think that you get just enough here for the over, so my total is 6.9, and with the Mariners plus 128 or higher, going to be looking at that run line. 913, 914 is the Chicago White Sox. They are on the road against the Milwaukee Brewers. The Miz, Jacob Mizorowski, is on the bump for the Brew Crew, and for the Chicago White Sox, it is one Mr. Shane Smith who gets a start for them. With the White Sox, they are between plus 153 to plus 165 underdogs, and between minus 175 to minus 186. That number on the Brewers with a total of 8. Over and under between minus 105 to a minus 115. That Brewers run line more around about a plus 115 to a plus 120, and I'm taking a shot here on the White Sox. I need at least a plus 162 to do so. I'm seeing quite a few 165s popping up. I'm going to be willing to take a shot here. For the Milwaukee Brewers, they trade away Freddie Peralta, they trade away Caleb Durbin, so I mean, it's not necessarily great to say the least with regards to this team. And Shane Smith, in his first year as a starter for the Chicago White Sox, not shabby. 3.81 ERA with a 4.10 fielding dependent, gave up 1 home run per 9 innings, 9 punch-outs per 9. I mean, he's a young 25-year-old that I think has a lot of upside, and for Mizorowski, came onto the scene very strong. Like, his strikeout numbers were absolutely amazing for the Brewers, with 12 strikeouts per 9 innings. Wild, though. 4.2 walks per 9 innings. He's the sort of guy that can knock himself out of a start very, very early, and that means that you have to rely upon a lot of the bullpen for the Brewers, which is a very good bullpen. They now pick up Anel Zerpa, was a little bit of a long guy for the Royals last season. Got the likes of Aaron Ashby, who was able to give you multiple innings. He was able to supply a sub-225 ERA. Abner Uribe was Mr. Do-It-All for that Brewers bullpen last season. They've got Trevor McGill at the closer spot. He was very good as well, but you don't want to be pressuring these guys day number one, so that's a little bit of an issue. And for the Brewers, they were one of the luckiest offenses in all of baseball. Like, they were a top 10 team in terms of run creation, but it's not necessarily a team that hits the deep ball too much. They pick up now Luis Rengifo, which he was hitting about a 240 last season. I've never been really a Luis Rengifo stan. He's needing to pick it up for Durbin, who got traded away in the offseason. Bryce Terang is a guy that does a solid job moving the line, and this is a team that does a good job in terms of stealing bases. You're going to get that out of Sal Frelick, who hit about a 285, 290 last season. Christian Yelich, he's not quite the MVP guy, but I mean, still, he was able to give the team 29 home runs, 100 plus RBI, was sometimes a little bit teeter-totterish, but provided about 345 on base. Nice stabilizer in this lineup. Jake Bowers, he was able to be solid, and Andrew Vaughn, like, he was absolutely terrible last season with the White Sox. Comes on over to the Brewers, and all of a sudden he's hitting again. And then with the White Sox, where he was absolutely terrible for. I think that's addition by subtraction that you no longer have Luis Robert out there. Just felt like the stink was seeping into him. They pick up Montaka Murakami. Hopefully I said that correct. The gentleman from overseas, and I expect some very big things from him. They paid a pretty nice posting fee for him. I do think that he's going to be able to come in there, give the team a little bit of pop, do a nice job in terms of move the line for the team. And then additionally, you've got Colson Montgomery, who actually provided quite a bit towards the back half of the season last year. I really like the way that he's able to find a way on. You maybe don't have a ton of power. Andrew Benintendi last season, he was able to post up 20 home runs, but this is a team that's one of the best in terms of not striking out in all of baseball. Awesome to say his kid have some good wheels. You've got Luanel Acuna, that's of relation to Ronald Acuna, had 0 home runs last season, but remember 2 years ago on that Mets playoff run, he did a nice job finding a way on base. And for the White Sox, bullpen is still an issue. When you've got Sean Newcomb coming out of the bullpen and Jordan Hicks, that's not great to say the least, but for Anthony Dominguez, I thought was a nice find. Jordan Leisure, he leisurely gave the team a sub-4 ERA. He was one of the few actual okay pieces for the team. Grant Taylor, he's a guy that was a relatively nice keeper towards back half of the season last year as well. I like what Shane Smith brings to the table. I think that Mizorowski might be knocked out of this game a little bit early, so I set a total of an 8.1. I'm in on the over and getting that plus 165. Give me the White Sox here on the money line. 9:15, 9:16. It's Padres. They're going to be playing us to the Detroit Tigers. Drake Skubal goes for the Tigres, and Nick Pivetta is on the bump for the Padres. Total on this game, it is 7. The unders between -110 to a -115. Overs -105 to a -110. And with the Tigers lying between -126 to -135 with them, plus 110 to plus 120 is that number on the Padres. And I'm willing to lay with the Tigers, set them at a -138. I know that there was a whole brouhaha with Drake Skubal and the whole ordeal with the World Baseball Classic. He still got in his work, and this guy was dominant once again last year. I mean, for Drake Skubal, 2.21 ERA, 2.45 fielding independent, strikeout to walk ratio of a 7.3. Like, this guy is the most dominant pitcher in all baseball right now. You can try to fight me if you want to, but I think that you're wrong. And when it comes to Drake Skubal, it's not even like there's a big fall off away from him. Like, his ERA at home was a 2.13. It was a 2.30 away from him, still was only giving up about 1 home run per 9 innings. And for Nick Pivetta, he was really good at home last season. Overall, a 2.87 ERA, but when he was out there in San Diego, because he's a little bit more of a fly ball pitcher, he was really in peak form. 2.36 ERA, was giving up about 0.8 home runs per 9 innings. So I think they get a nice pitcher's pool. We did see the Detroit Tigers bullpen last season have some issues. They were more of a league average team with regards to that bullpen ERA, but picking up Kyle Finnegan late in the season I think is big. You've got a lot of guys that are able to go multiple innings. Will Vest, Tyler Holton, along with Brant Herter. I really like their top guys, and I think that they return to what they were more in 2024 now. They pick up Kenley Jansen. Gosh, Kenley Jansen. That's not great to say the least. But I think that they can build a big enough lead where if Kenley Jansen stupidly gives up a run or two, that you're still going to be safe there. And then with this Tigers lineup, it's not one that's going to completely blow you away, but it feels like everyone's just relatively solid. Like Riley Green gives you 35 plus home runs. It's about a 255. He's your main masher for this team, but Gleyber Torres, 255, 16 home runs. Spencer Torkelson, he doesn't give you the greatest on base, but he got up to 30 home runs last season. Dylan Dingler, I like what I saw out of him last season. Parker Meadows is a guy that really had his issues last season, but he was dealing with injuries all throughout. You still have Javi Baez on the roster, who he was actually able to find a way to reach base. Kerry Carpenter, I really think, is an underrated piece as well. And on the flip side, for the San Diego Padres, you've got a lineup that very much was hit or miss last season as well. Ramon Laureano, I thought, was a nice pickup towards the back half of the season. Xander Bogaerts just has not been worth the money. Was a little bit better towards the back half of the season last year, but I know you got 265 with 11 home runs. That's not what they're paying this guy for. Jake Cronenworth, okay in terms of moving the line. You know what you're going to be able to get out of Fernando Tatis Jr., Manny Machado. These are guys that are able to give you some nice power, and they do a nice job in terms of getting on base. And they figured out the catcher spot with Freddie Fermin coming over late in the season as well. And then with the Padres, you know that bullpen is going to be there as well. Throughout much of the season, they were either number 1 or number 2 in terms of bullpen ERA. They are, though, dealing with a few injuries. Yuki Matsui, Jason Adam, they're most likely going to be starting out the year on the injured list. But Mason Miller, after he had a little bit of a rough go of it to begin the season with the Athletics, he found it out there in San Diego. Wandy Peralta's not necessarily trustworthy, but Adrian Morejon is a guy that's able to give you multiple innings. Jeremiah Estrada had a really nice start to the season last year. Was a little bit rough towards the back half. You no longer have Robert Suarez out there, but it's a San Diego Padres bullpen that has relatively good depth, even with Adam and Matsui deal with a little bit of injury. In the end, though, I think that Tariq Skubal is just too good. I think that both of these starters are going to be incredible, and I do think that the Tigers bullpen returns to the form that they had 2 seasons ago. So set a total of a 6.2. I like the under. And with the Tigers, I'm willing to lay up to minus 137 with them. 917, 918. It's the Red Sox on the road against the Reds, as it is going to be one Mr. Andrew Abbott who's going to be going for the Reds, and Garrett Crochet is looking to crochet a win for the Red Sox, who do find themselves as minus 150 to minus 164 road favorites, and between plus 134 to plus 140, that number on the Reds, and the total's between 8 to 8.5. On the 8.5, the under is minus 125, over is plus 105 on the 8. Over is minus 110 to a minus 120, under is between even and minus 110, and I like the under here. I set my total at a 7.4. Would rather take the 8 under at even money rather than laying the minus 125 on the 8.5. But that said, with Andrew Abbott, I'm willing to trust in him as well. Anything above plus 135 was a play for me on the Reds, as I recognize that Andrew Abbott is not quite where Garrett Crochet is. Crochet was absolutely tremendous last season, posting up a 2.59 ERA. Fielding independent was relatively in line with that, as he was giving up only about 2 walks to 11 strikeouts per 9 innings. But for Andrew Abbott, fielding independent was not necessarily the world's greatest, but still posted up a 10-7 record, a sub-3 ERA for the Reds. It's not a bullpen that is necessarily dominant, but I think that there's some upside with someone like a Tony Santillan, who last year he was able to give the team some relatively good innings. Additionally, they made a few shrewd pickups in the offseason. Pierce Johnson is a guy that has some upside. He was posting up a sub-325 ERA. Brock and Roll Burke was actually okay with the LA Angels last season, and Emilio Pagan, man. That guy is not great to say the least, but Graham Ashcraft has actually found a home in that bullpen, and for the Cincinnati Reds, it's not a team with necessarily a ton of pop. Ellie De La Cruz is Mr. Do-It-All for the team, but Brian Hayes was able to find it after getting traded away from the Pittsburgh Pirates last season. I do wonder what you're going to get at the first base spot. They pick up Nathaniel Lowe. It looks like Sal Stewart is going to be that opening day starter. I would personally prefer Lowe over Stewart personally. Tyler Stevenson has been a little bit of a hit-or-miss catcher, and Matt McLean, he was just a guy that really couldn't hit for a lot of average last season, and that's a big key for the Cincinnati Reds. This Reds team actually averaged about as many runs per game at home rather than away from home, and it does feel like they might be a little bit of an all-or-nothing team this season. Dane Myers, who knows what you're going to get out of the outfield from him, and Eugenio Suarez, he had that massive year with 49 home runs, obviously knows all about this ballpark. I think that he's going to do a nice job of mashing in for the Boston Red Sox. No longer do they have Alex Bregman. This is still a really fearsome lineup. They were averaging about 4.8 runs per game, so the fact that they pick up Wilson Contreras to be able to fill in the infield, I think that that's big. And Caleb Durbin had himself a nice year with the Brewers. Not a guy that's going to hit for a ton of power or anything like that, but moves a line. He's able to give you about a 335 on base, some stolen bases, and he's young at 26 years old. I think they can build off of that. This season, Carlos Narvaez at the catcher spot was very rock solid. He was able to give you 15 plus home runs. You have Roman Anthony now back in full force, and when Roman Anthony went down with an injury, you could tell that the Red Sox just were not the same. Again, not a guy that's going to give you 100 billion home runs or anything like that, but just does a great job being able to get on base, put men on the pond for guys like Weiler Abreu, Don Rafael, and company. And for the Red Sox, it's a solid bullpen. Garrett Whitlock is a nice multi-inning guy. Danny Kalum is someone that they pick up after he had a sub-250 ERA in his stops last season. Greg Weissert has been pretty solid in this bullpen as well, and Aroldis Chapman was arguably the best closer in all baseball last season. So I do think that there's some upside there. I think that it's going to be a low-scoring game, even though they call it Great American Small Park. It actually didn't play too small last season, and I think that both of these pitchers are going to be rock solid, and I think that Abbott is able to match up with Crochet in this ordeal. So set the Reds at a plus 135. We'll take the Reds on the money line, and like the under, so I told 7.4, 919, 920. It's the Rangers. They're going to be on the road against the Philadelphia Phillies. Cadena Sefer Sanchez is on the bump for the Phils. Nathan Eovaldi is on the bump for the Rangers. Rangers are a pretty good size underdog, anywhere between plus 126 to a plus 135, minus 148 to minus 163. That number on the Phils, 8 is the total. The under is minus 115, over is minus 105. Starting to see some 7.5s as well. Over is minus 120, and the under is even on that. But that said, whether you got an 8 or a 7.5, personally, I got an 8. I do like the under. Semi-total is 7.3. We were talking about it with our good friend William Boor, the fact that Nathan Eovaldi, when he was out there last season, man, he could have won a Cy Young Award. Like, he posted up a 173 ERA. He was getting 9 strikeouts and 1.5 walks per 9 innings, 0.7 home runs allowed per 9 innings. He did it at home. He did it on the road. Nathan Eovaldi at the home humble age of 35 last season, he was tremendous for this team. And then you've got Christopher Sanchez, who he came into his own. He was posting up right around about a 2.50 or so ERA. I love what he's able to do. He's good at home. He's good on the road. His strikeout stuff, he was able to find that once again last year as he was getting 9.5 strikeouts per 9 innings. Keep in mind that he really honed in on the command in 2024, but didn't have quite the strikeouts. Now he's been able to put the full package together, but for the Philadelphia Phillies, have to have a few question marks with their lineup now that they no longer have Nick Castellanos out there. Now they do pick up the former Philadelphia Philly, Adolis Garcia, who, the last few seasons, this guy's been terrible. He had like a 226 with regards to a batting average. His on-base percentage last year was a 271 with 19 home runs. You need to get more than 19 home runs if you're going to have that pitiful of an on-base percentage. JT Realmuto is rock solid. He always finds a way to move the line. He's very good at the catcher spot. Bryson Stott is a guy that's able to give you about a 250 average. He's not going to wow you with the power, but he's got functional power. You got Trey Turner down for one, who does a nice job being able to move the line, and then it just feels like with Bryce Harper, it's a little bit all or nothing. When he is hot, he is the best hitter in all of baseball, arguably, and then when he's cold, he just goes through his rough stretches, and it feels like he started out very cold the last few seasons, so that's a little bit of it. Now, with the Philadelphia Phillies, they did revamp that bullpen a little bit. I like the pickup of Brad Keller. He was really good with the Cubs last year with about a 2.07 ERA. You don't mess with the Johan Duran. That is one of the most dominant closers out there in all of baseball. And now you've got a full season of Jose Alvarado after he had the drug suspension last year, but after he came back from suspension, he was absolutely terrible. So that's something that does need to be taken into account as well. And for the Texas Rangers, they really underachieved towards the beginning part of the season. No longer do they have Marcus Semien out there. I expect a little bit of a positive bounce back for Jock Peterson after he was just so bad last season. But having Evan Carter out there is big as well. Evan Carter was such a big reason why the Rangers won that World Series a few seasons ago. A guy that's able to give you a really good on-base percentage. He's able to provide some functional pop. Not a guy that's going to hit a bunch of bombs, but I like what he brings to the table. Corey Seager had a little bit of a down season as well last year. He was dealing with injury. Getting him back is big. Jake Berger is never a guy that's going to hit for a lot of average, but he's able to give you some power. Danny Jansen is a guy that they pick up after he's on his tour. Another guy that doesn't necessarily do the world's greatest job in terms of moving the line, but I think that Josh Young, who's still relatively young at 28 years old, he finds it as well. And I actually really like this Rangers bullpen. You've got Robert Garcia at the closer spot, who was really good last season. Additionally, you've got some nice depth with Tyler Alexander is able to eat innings. Jalen Beeks is an innings eater as well. Jacob Junis is a guy that is able to give you multiple innings. So in terms of the early part of the season, with the Rangers having so many guys that are able to go multiple innings, that really helps them out here. I think that Eovaldi gives you a really good start. So I'm willing to take the plus money here with the Rangers. I did set them as an underdog of plus 128, and I like the under, so my total is 7.3, and wrap things up with 921, 922. The Rays are going to be on the road against the St. Louis Cardinals as Drew Rasmussen goes for the Rays, and Matthew Liberatore is on the bump for the Cardinals. Cardinals do find themselves as a slim underdog here, anywhere between about plus 101 as high as a plus 110, and between minus 117 to minus 125. That number on the Rays, 7.5 is the total. Under and over, anywhere between minus 105 to a minus 115, and I laid it with the Rays. I'd be willing to go up to a minus 123 with them. Drew Rasmussen doesn't necessarily blow you away. He gives you fewer than 8 strikeouts per 9 innings, but he just does a good job of being judicious with his pitches. He doesn't put guys on base cheaply. Last year, a 2.76 ERA. Fielding fan was a little bit above that at about a 3.84. That's mainly because of the 7.6 strikeouts per 9 innings, but gave up 1 home run, 2.2 walks per 9 innings. I really like what he's able to bring to the table. And for Liberatore, it feels like he's starting to put it together. A guy that had a lot of upside coming into the big league level. He had a little bit of shakiness in like 2023, 2022, was able to put it all together a little bit more last year. At a 4.21 ERA, was, in my opinion, one of the more unlucky pitchers in all of baseball. Fielding independent of a 4.03. Only 1.1 home runs, 2.4 walks allowed per 9 innings. Not necessarily a strikeout guy. I think that he's going to be able to find a little bit more of that this season, but for the St. Louis Cardinals, what are you going to get out of this lineup? No longer do you have Nolan Arenado out there. No longer do you have Wilson Contreras. So they're looking at Pedro Paez, who doesn't hit very well. I actually really like Ivan Herrera. They're going to probably have him DHing. He hit about a 285 with 19 home runs last season. Nolan Gorman is able to give you pop, but he hits about a 205. You don't know what you're going to get out of him. Lars Nootbaar is injured once again. Shock, surprise, surprise. Jordan Walker had like a really nice start to the season 3 years ago, but he has not been able to find it. JJ Weatherholt is a little bit of a young guy that they're hoping is going to be able to develop as a young 23-year-old. I do think that there's some upside there, but don't know what you're going to get out of him. Alex Burleson is probably the main stabilizer for this team, and for the bullpen. They traded away their main closer in Ryan Helsley, and they actually got a little bit better without him, and it's a functional bullpen. Like, I like Jojo Romero. He's able to give you a sub-350 ERA. Matt Savanson is one of the more underrated relievers in all baseball. He had a sub-2 ERA last season. Riley O'Brien, Chris Roycroft. These are guys that are relatively solid. They bring in George Soriano, I think is going to be absolutely terrible in this bullpen, but overall, aside from George Soriano, you've got a relatively okay bullpen, but guess what the Tampa Bay Rays do? They always have really good bullpen pitching. You've got Griffin Jackson, who was not great with the Minnesota Twins, but I'm sure that they're working their magic right now to be able to get him firing at full force. Ian Seymour's right now listed in the bullpen. He's probably going to need to start because you've got Ryan Pepio, who just hit the injured list, but these guys like a Cole Souls or Mason Englert, these are guys that were sort of just jobbers I'm sure are going to go out there and give you a sub-3 ERA because that's just a Tampa Bay Rays way, and for the Tampa Bay Rays, they're going to be dealing with injuries to Taylor Walls and Gavin Lux. The Walls injury is probably addition by subtraction, but Jonathan Aranda is a guy that I really liked. He was dealing with a little bit of injury last season, but when he was out there supplying about a 390 or so on base, 14 home runs, he's an underrated piece for the team. Obviously, with the Rays, they've had some unexpected things pop up with regards to some of their guys out there over the last few seasons, but Chandler Simpson is one of the better base stealers that you're going to find in all baseball. No power whatsoever, but finds a way to move the line. Jake Fraley is a guy that I thought was a nice shrewd pickup coming on over from the Cincinnati Reds along with the Atlanta Braves last season. I think that he's going to be able to find a little bit more. Junior Caminero is a nice power hitter that hit 45 bombs last season. The catcher spot is still rough. They bring in Nick Fortes to be able to hold down the fort for this team in the back half of the season last year. I think that that's an upgrade to what they had, and I do think that for Drew Rasmussen does a nice job going out there, getting the job done against the Cardinals lineup that I am just not bullish on whatsoever. Somebody told us 7.1, so like the under, and with the Rays willing to lay up to minus 123 on that money line, and that'll wrap things up for the Thursday edition of the Baseball Betting Show, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Big thanks to William Boor of Action Network for joining me in the last segment. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Baseball Betting Show, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one or two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @GUnit_81. Keep in mind, letters CM, they mean does not matter, so per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other ways, find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it's very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review, coming at you guys every single day with picks and analysis on every game every day, so I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.